Why aren't passive preamps more popular? Larry in Calgary, Canada has that question, and he says the idea of good passive preamps seems logical, as it doesn't add anything to the source music, the CD, the turntable, etc. Does PS Audio have any plans on selling passive preamps? Well, no, but we used to. In fact, I would go so far as to say that we invented the passive preamp, but that may be a stretch, because no matter what I think, some history buff will find out that, oh no, that guy did it 20 years before you were born, you know. But as far as I know, we kind of invented the passive preamp. And I'll tell you a little story about how that happened. So years ago, when Stan and I had first started PS Audio back in '74, we made only a phono preamplifier. So here was a box that had turntable cartridge on its input, just hook the wires up, and then on its output was the amplified turntable signal with the RAAA curve and all that. And it was our little phono box that we sold for $59.95, money back guarantee, that later someday went up to the astronomical price of $119.95. And we sold thousands and thousands of those boxes. Now this box didn't have a volume control, and people started hounding us. Well, hey, I bought your phono preamp and I've got to hook it into my Sansuer, my Sansui, or even, you know, I've got a Hafler or whatever I had. I got to use their thing, and I want to have an all PS Audio system. So why don't you guys make a preamp? Well, when we first started doing that, we of course didn't have a preamp. We had an Audio Research SP3 that we really loved, but that was kind of our reference. And the last thing we wanted to do was plug our phono preamplifier into another manufacturer's a different sounding preamplifier, because then every bit of work that we did to make that sound good would be colored by the Audio Research or the Hafler or whatever. So we wanted the cleanest path possible. So what did we do? Well, we simply used one of these, and what I'm holding is a potentiometer, and this is basically a volume control. You turn this up and down, and we call them pots, and there's a shaft, and then there are three little terminals, and this one on the far left is the gazinta, and then the middle one is called the slider or the wiper, and it's the part that moves up and down, and then this one is what you would connect ground to, or however you want to configure it, right? Could do it the other way around. Actually, I think I have it backwards. I think the one on the right is the input and the one on the left is the ground. There you go. Yep, because as I turn it, I want to go down, so I'm going to bring that wiper all the way down to ground, and then there's no sound. This is all we used. We just had a pot, a very nice Noble or an Alps pot, and that was the least amount of color. So when it came time to build a preamplifier, we took our pot and we added a line stage, which was a little, 15, 20 dB amplification stage to further boost the volume level of our phono preamp up. That was how preamps were done. And we listened to it and we said, and we worked really hard. And we circuit after circuit after circuit, we could not make a circuit that had no sound to it, no matter what we did. We used discretes, op amps, high volts, low volts, everything we could think of, transformers, everything. Everything had a sound to it, except this pot, which we later learned also has a sound to it, but hey, we had to turn the volume up and down somehow, right? So Stan came up with the idea. He said, let's build a preamp that basically has no electronics, it's just this pot. And for those people that don't have enough volume, we'll put a switch on it so that you could switch the line stage in, and you'd have to suffer the little bit of degradation that we knew you'd have, but that's the price you pay for not having efficient enough speakers or whatever was causing you to need that extra gain, right? But for those of you that had the right speakers, that had the right amplifier, you could get away with just a pot, and we called it the linear control center. And here is the linear control center. And I apologize to Ohm's law listeners, but I'm looking at a little box. It was the same as our phono stage. It's got walnut end caps, and I don't know what size this is, maybe 10 inches and maybe 2 or 3 inches tall and maybe 6, 7 inches deep. And on the front is a big volume control, a balance control, the input selector, this tape monitor, because everybody had tape decks back then, and this switch, which we kind of invented, kind of revolutionized the way things were done. And we called it back then a gain defeat. And as you click it, there was minus 20 dB, and here was 0 dB. I never liked those terms because they didn't explain it, but in the minus 20 dB, all there was the selector switch and the pot, just like Stan and I had used forever, hence a passive preamp. So we made a switchable passive preamp, and by clicking it in or out, you could have just pots in a box. And we so liked the audio research that we went out and found their knobs and stole the look of their knobs. Stole the look, we bought the knobs. This was a company called Rogan, and Rogan sounds like a hair treatment, doesn't it? Anyway, Rogan made these knobs, and we bought them, same as audio research did. They're just plastic knobs. But we did like it, and it kind of looked cool. Here's the problem with the passive preamp, and then I'll get off my horse here. While it doesn't have any coloration other than the pot itself, it also has trouble driving cables, and you wind up losing bass. Not measured bass, but the impact of bass, the taut, strong bass that only a buffered output, doesn't have to have gain. You could put a buffer on there and you'll get that bass back. But that was the problem. People would say this sounds as clean as possible, but it kind of sounds wimpy in the bass compared to this that didn't. So that's always been the problem with passive preamps. They just are a little wimpy sounding. And so, you know what? Like everything in life, it's a balancing act. Hope that helps. Thanks. Bye.